show you how to make a miniature worm composting bin. You're going to be doing your own vermicomposting in what used to be a tennis ball tube. This tube I've already put holes in, all kinds of aeration and drainage. I'm going to start with shredded paper, and it needs to be moist because our worms need moisture for their skin. They breathe through their skin, and it has to be moist so they don't suffocate. So I'm mixing that up. The tray that this is sitting in is the rest of the feed stock, all the food we're going to give our worms. And I'll take you on a tour of that as I add it. Okay, so the newspaper in this case is going to be about the consistency of the temperature, the moisture of a wrung out sponge. And we're going to put that in the bottom. And that's going to be about the bottom couple inches. The other food stock I have today, feed stock, is asparagus stems, strawberries and blueberries, squash, melon with a little bit of rind on it, coffee grounds and filters, and eggshells that I've scrunched way up. Once we have our 2 inches or so of the moistened paper shred in the bottom, we're going to add in our worms. So I have worms that I've taken from my own big compost bin at home. And remember, they don't like the light, so I'm going to have to dig down a little bit, remove some of the moist shred that was on top of them to find my worms. And hopefully you'll find a nice big bunch of them. And when you find a grouping of worms like this, that's called a squirm of worms. So we're going to go ahead and add in our squirm with some of their moist bedding. And now we're going to add in the different kinds of feed stock, food stock. Some of it's mixed up. We have asparagus, we have zucchini, we have melon, blueberries, strawberries, all kinds of good for them food. And we put the worms in after the bedding, and then the food on top is because they go towards the surface. They are surface dwellers. These are red wigglers. They are not earthworms. They like to be towards the top. So we're going to have a work up into their food. I'm going to add in some coffee grounds and the coffee filters, as well as some eggshell. I pulverize it so it looks kind of like a powder. We add in the grit of the coffee grounds and the eggshells to help the worm move around. It uses it for its setae to be moving through the food and through the bedding. And it also consumes some of it. It goes into its crop and then its gizzard to help break down the food that is processed through their body. A little bit more food. So you can see a couple inches of the bedding, our worms, and then their food stock. Now I'm going to go ahead and reuse some of the moist bedding that the worms came in. That's a variety of types of paper. And then the very last layer is going to be some dry shredded paper. That helps manage the moisture within the tube. So we gathered all of our feed stock. We built our mini composting bin for worms. Now to maintain this, probably once a week, I would take off that top layer of the moistened bedding material and dry and add in just a little bit more food. You could probably leave it be for as long as a month. If you can still see food in there, you don't have to feed them. But make sure that the bedding you put back on top at the second layer is moist and then dry on top. And then to harvest it, I'll show you one that's been sitting for about 3 weeks now. We had it covered, and I'll show you how to cover this one because the worms like to be in the dark. this one's got a bunch of brown stuff at the bottom here. This brown stuff is the compost that your worms have made for you. It's the worm castings. Worm poop. Castings is their fancy name for it. That you can use as a soil amendment. Here's a whole container of it. It's brown gold. It's just lovely. It's nice and moist and crumbly. You can use that mixed in as you're planting plants in the soil, or in your potting mix as you're putting it into a planter, or you can put it on top of either a plant in the ground or in a pot. It's called top dressing, and then you water it in for extra nutrients. We're going to cover up our worms here. The new worm bin we just made, we're going to put in a sock to keep them in the dark. And we'll leave it on a tray because there's moisture that comes through both from the juices from the fruits and vegetables and some waste. And we don't want that to go on anything else. I did a double decker here, so you can see some of this brown liquid in the bottom here. That's going to be on your tray and probably absorbed by your sock. That's called leachate. And leachate is the byproduct I spoke of the juices from the fruits, vegetables, and gone ahead and filtered through the castings. And you can use that diluted to water your plants. I hope this gets you very excited about your worm composting journey. Thank you.